Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case. If you wanted breaking news, you're going to get it today. What's come about in recent time is Jack Newton and the father Caleb Newton responding back to the wrongful death lawsuit in which the documents have been provided. Their response has been given officially and formally, and today we're going to take a look at it, reading through what's been said, their responses, whether they admit to some form of guilt, whether they deny, go against, or maybe they leave it open-ended without giving much of a clear response. This is the similar format as Val Patrol, I believe, but it'll be interesting to see if the attitudes are different, because we've got to take in mind more informally, I believe it was the People article in which Caleb responded and gave his original thoughts and reaction to the wrongful death lawsuit being filed by the estate of Noah Presgrove. And Caleb thought it was one big waste of time and it's going to be the opposite of making progression. And Caleb said he spoke to his son Jack about the party and the alcohol, the blame for it, and Jack's response was, well, like with previous parties, we've all brought alcohol down with us, so the responsibility is shared. Will that shine within the court documents, what we're looking at today? Passing on the blame, spreading the responsibility. Even now, we've seen in the wrongful death lawsuit the claim of Jack Newton being supposedly responsible for going to Napoli's, the store in Marlow, Oklahoma, which is away from the party, much further north and further away from where Jack was living at the time at least, buying alcohol from there, getting away with it, not being asked for identification, underage as well, but successful, then taking it down to the party and supplying to Noah as it's claimed in the wrongful death lawsuit. But how much of that alcohol that was bought was consumed by Noah Presgrove? Did anybody else share the bottle? Did anyone else drink from it? What percentage was done by Noah? And is there any way of measuring that truly? It might prove difficult. So then when it comes to the responsibilities, the blame factor, it can make it a little bit muddied. But with the official responses and the responses from the court, it'll be interesting to see the percentage of responsibility and who's at fault and who's not. Interesting how with Jack Newton and Caleb, it's done together collective, but I guess that's because father and son. It makes me think when defendants like Stevie Howard, Carter Combs and Avery Howard, will they all respond together as one in some documents? I guess time will tell. But welcome if you are here during the live premiere. You don't want to miss a single piece. Be sure to stick around, share your thoughts in the live chat box on the right side of the screen and at any point, any time. And for those watching up on catch up, leave a comment, drop it down below under the video. It'll help with spreading awareness. And you can let me know, are you shocked and surprised by the responses of Caleb and Jack? Or were you anticipating it? Do you agree, disagree? If you have any questions or answers, feel free to leave them below. If you want to catch up on recent coverage and such as videos like Val Patrol responding back to what they think and their responsibilities and what they agree or disagree with, you'll be able to find that top right corner where the eye symbol is up there, full playlist available on the case. And if you want to support my channel, there is a direct link down below, pinned message, PayPal and channel membership. With that all being said, let's get straight into the latest court documents. Here is the first page to the documents, and I'll read most of it out. You should be able to see it clearly on screen. File District Court, Stephens County, August 26, 2025. Very recent. In the District Court of Stephens County, State of Oklahoma, it gives the defendants' names on the side, same as usual. But the defendants answering in this particular case is Jack Newton and Caleb Newton. Defendants Jack and Caleb hereby answer plaintiff's petition as follows. As a general proposition, defendants Newton deny each and every material allegation of negligence and damages as set forth in plaintiff's petition and demand proof. So the claims, the accusations of damage and responsibility, what we've seen already from the wrongful death lawsuit, such as Jack supplying Noah alcohol, Jack convincing Noah to come back and providing copious amounts and giving alcohol when Noah's already drunk already and onwards, and Caleb being linked to the party somehow by giving permission and allowing Noah to ride there side by side, even though Caleb was nowhere at the party or present nearby, yet still accused of allowing Noah to use the side by side, and responsibility falling back on Caleb, who should have known better because Noah Presgrove was drunk. But how would Caleb know if he wasn't there and he wasn't in contact with Noah? So in some ways you could understand why they would deny this and that, but is there any responsibility whatsoever as a best friend to Noah Presgrove looking out for one? But how can you be looking out for one when supposedly Jack has gone behind Noah's back, been flirting with Noah's girlfriend around the time? So that's on the sideline then. Let's just look at it first. Number 1, regarding paragraph 1 of the petition, the wrongful death lawsuit, defendants admit that Noah Presgrove, was a resident of Stephens County, September 2023. Defendants deny all other allegations. Now, whether defendants are innocent or truly guilty, it's likely that most people would deny allegations. And, of course, if you're innocent, you'll deny, of course. But, at times when people are guilty, they're going to try and protect themselves. If they just admit to the truth on the spot, then it's game over for them. It depends on how badly they value their freedom versus how badly they value a conscience in their mind, if there's any guilt within, any feeling whatsoever of responsibility. See, what's interesting is with Caden Pressey, even though Caden Pressey isn't listed as a defendant whatsoever in the wrongful death lawsuit, Caden said in his own words, it eats him up inside. It plays on his mind in the past when Noah reached out to Caden for a ride home and Caden said no because of being drinking. Caden has reflected since and kind of blames himself that if he had given Noah a ride home, Noah would still be alive till this day. So for someone like Caden, who is an innocent person in the case, but to display a form of guilt, sadness, how it eats him up inside, that level of emotion for an innocent person is very interesting and maybe a contrast to how defendants may react and respond. It's an interesting contrast and a noteworthy observation. Let's move on to the second page of the document. Number 2, regarding the petition, defendants are without sufficient information to either admit or deny allegations contained in that paragraph. If you wanted reference to it, you'd look back at that wrongful death lawsuit, in case you're wondering. I did that with Val Patrol. If there's anything that really does stand out, then we can acknowledge it further. But a fair portion of it will be defendants without sufficient information to admit or deny the allegations. Val Patrol was really heavy on that. It may differ here to some extent. So for the bits that do differ, I will read out. If you want to pause the video, you can yourself. But for most part of it, without sufficient information, and paragraph 9. Moving on, this is where it starts changing up just a little bit. Defendants are without sufficient information, paragraph 11. There we go. I think Val Patrol also admitted to it because it was like a simplistic term. Paragraph 11, defendants admit the allegations contained therein. And 12, I think 12 might have been admitted by Val Patrol from my memory. Regarding paragraph 12, defendants admit the allegations contained therein to the extent descendant's body was found September 4th, side of the Highway 81, Terrell. Defendants are without sufficient information to either admit or deny the remaining allegations contained in this paragraph. However, to the extent there is an allegation of negligence or damages, defendants deny the same and demand proof. So at the end of the day, this whole demanding of proof and evidence, well, as long as OHP has it, and it shows that these people might be responsible, then that's what matters. But if there's evidence to say that it doesn't exist or it's innocent, then there's that too. I mean, I think it was said that the subpoena was already granted. So you'd think or hope that maybe the family have got the rest of the investigative material and evidence collected by OHP within the investigation to look at themselves and whether any of that directly applies to like how the defendants here demand for proof. It'd be interesting to see the outcome. So, paragraph 13, defendants are without sufficient information, and so on. However, to the extent there is an allegation of negligence or damage, defendants deny the same, demand proof. What I will do then, this time round, I will acknowledge it from different points of views, like Michael Facekaz, and if there's any comments in between, just to see what the reactions are from people there. Beside all the legal stuff in the documents, it's good to see it from the general public's point of view, so we will get to that later. 14, defendants are without sufficient information, and so on. However, to the extent there's allegations of negligence or damage, same situation. 15, defendants admit the allegations contained therein to the extent descendant attended a party. I guess it moves on to the next page. It took place at the time and the location at issue in the plaintiff's petition. Defendants are without sufficient information to either admit or deny the remaining allegations. 16, defendants deny the allegations contained. 17, there we go, we've got a bit more of a full one here with a bit more context. Petition, defendants admit the allegations contained therein to the extent that defendant Jack Newton was under the age of 21. At the time of the events at issue in plaintiff's petition, defendant Jack Newton denies the remaining allegations contained. The paragraph makes no mention or allegations against defendant Caleb Newton, and therefore no response is necessary. And yeah, because even though Caleb is brought up within the wrongful death lawsuit, not mentioned as much as Jack, and you'd expect that because Jack was at the party, Caleb, from the looks of it, wasn't, but somehow Caleb's still tied in with the whole giving permission for Noah to ride the side-by-side for, I think it might have been mentioned in the petition as well, unless it was mentioned in a news article instead. Something, or was it by Alicia in a audio voice message about Brylan Sweat being easily led along, hanging out with the Newtons, hanging out with Caleb, being treated like an older adult, being given alcohol and supplied that. Unrelated to the Noah Presgrave case, but I just remember that off the top of my head, memorising it. Beside that, to the extent answers required, defendant is without sufficient information to either admit or deny allegations. Further, to the extent plaintiff alleges negligence or wrongdoing on part of defendant Caleb Newton, defendant denies the same and demands proof. Right. 18, defendants admit allegations contained. Defendants are without sufficient information to either admit or deny remaining allegations of property ownership contained in this paragraph. Without sufficient information. Ownership of property. Well, if you're talking about the trailer, talking about the party house, of course Caleb and Jack aren't going to own it because they don't live there. They didn't buy the land, they don't own the land. That'll be more so applied to what? How do you say it? Was it Jonah Wilcoxon? Is that the name, Jonah? Or was it another name? But the Wilcoxon. I think it was Bub Wilcoxon. And then you got Stevie Howard, Carter, Avery, them lot, because they were living there, Avery, Carter, Logan. But as for Jack visiting, because boyfriend to Carter, staying over here and there, but not owning the place. Anyway, let's move on. It's kind of spread out, this. 19, defendants are without sufficient information to either admit or deny allegations contained in this paragraph. However, to an extent, and so on. Same situation here. Paragraph 20, same response. Paragraph 21, there's a little bit more here to explain. See, yeah, you can say, very limited this, it doesn't give much away, but this is the early stages, right? It hasn't really progressed onwards. The whole discovery phase, the whole processing of the information and material to counter or to support when they demand for evidence and proof onwards in the future. Will be interesting. 21. that defendant Caleb Newton did not own or personally have control of the all-terrain vehicle identified in this paragraph. There we go. That's a key one, that. Did not own or have control over the side-by-side. It was Jack Newton's side-by-side at the party. Caleb did not own it. Caleb wasn't present for that. And yet the wrongful death lawsuit stated Caleb was responsible for it. So it's very messy and reckless how that was constructed at the time. Therefore denies the allegations contained in this therein. This paragraph makes no mention or allegations against defendant Jack Newton, and therefore no response is necessary. To the extent an answer is required, defendant is without sufficient information to either admit or deny allegations contained in this paragraph. Further, to the extent plaintiff alleges negligence or wrongdoing on part of defendant Jack Newton, defendant denies the same and demands proof. Okay. I mean, if Jack was asleep at the time, whilst the vehicle may have belonged to him, Jack couldn't babysit Noah 24/7. Jack couldn't be constantly alert and constantly awake just to make sure if Noah gets the keys or not. You are entitled to have a sleep and a rest in between. Though, when there's Carter Combs that's in the same room as Jack but awake or half awake and notices Noah getting the keys and Carter doesn't do anything about it, I'm surprised the wrongful death lawsuit didn't point blame at Carter then compared to Caleb getting it more so. Interesting. 22. Defendants are without sufficient information to either admit or deny allegations. However, to the extent there is allegations of negligence or damage, defendants deny the same. I think it was about 40 or so we'll try and glide through it if it becomes very repetitive, of course. But we've got 23 paragraph. Defendant Jack Newton denies the allegations contained, demands proof. The paragraph makes no mention against defendant Caleb. Answer is required. Defendant is without sufficient information, and so on. Plaintiff alleges negligence or wrongdoing on part of defendant Caleb Newton. Defendant denies the same and demands proof. Paragraph 24, same situation, response 25. Defendants admit the allegations contained therein that the descendant's body was discovered September 4th on the highway. Defendants are without to admit or deny the remaining allegations in the paragraph, and so on. 26, without, same. You can pause the video if you want, but there's no point going too far into it when it's the same stuff, really. 27, defendants are without sufficient information to admit or deny allegations contained in this paragraph, however, to the extent, same. 29, plaintiff merely makes a conclusory statement of law which does not require response. Right. 30, makes a conclusory statement, does not require a response. Same thing there. I'm sure there'll be some people that have summarised it themselves, which we'll get to. 32, defendants deny allegations contained, denying yet again. Defendants owed, there we go, this is a key one, of course. Therein, to the extent these answering defendants, Caleb, Jack, owed any duty of care to Noah Presgrove, breached any duty of care to Noah, and demand proof of it. Defendants are without sufficient information to either admit or deny the remaining allegations. So this is linking to the responsibility factor, what the party goes, what these said defendants could have done to provide safety, some kind of safety net, some kind of safe space, some kind of way of monitoring and measuring the health of Noah Presgrove to ensure that he's okay, that he wouldn't die, that he wouldn't get too drunk. But at the end of the day, the age Noah was, the age of the people were, all having their own little responsibilities to some extent, and maybe we can add on to that later. 33. I mean, look, maybe you could have a fully grown adult and then there could be a secondary individual tied in with a similar case, but the victim, the descendant, let's say they were disabled and vulnerable and they needed a carer. Well, then you could say the carer had some form of commitment, some kind of responsibilities and ties to ensure the safety of that said individual. And if there was a failing within that, well, then there's some kind of responsibility and consequence to be faced, maybe. But Noah able at the time, physically, mentally, to some extent, right? And the same with other people individually speaking. 34, defendants deny allegations. Defendants are without sufficient information to the extent of the paragraph. 35, defendants deny, and so on. Defendants, there we go, this is another key one. Allegations contained to the extent these answering defendants engaged in any civil conspiracy in regard to Noah's death and the build-up to it, demand proof. Defendants are without sufficient information to admit or deny it. Paragraph 36, defendants deny allegations. That should move on to the next page. Yes, we'll just read it out completely. The petition, paragraph 36, defendants deny allegations contained therein to the extent these answering defendants intentionally or accidentally killed Noah and demand proof. Defendants are without sufficient information to admit or deny it, and so on. 37, pretty clear, defendants deny allegations. 38, it is unclear to which defendants plaintiff directs these allegations and merely makes a conclusory statement. That again. Defendants deny the same and demands proof. 39, paragraph makes no mention or allegations, so on again. 40, makes no mentions or allegations, demands proof of it, defendants do. 41, makes no mention, all repeated, deny and demands proof. 42, makes no mention, demands proof. 43, makes no mention, demands proof. It's all the same, really. Deny allegations contained in 45 and 46, deny the allegations, both. So really, they're on the same wavelength, Jack and Caleb, as you'd probably expect. 47, defendants deny allegations, demand proof. 48, deny allegations. 49, regarding wherefore paragraph following 48, defendants deny allegations. And then the affirmative defences. Defendants Caleb Newton and Jack Newton raised the following affirmative defences. 1, plaintiff's petition fails to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. 2, descendant was negligent and his negligence approximately caused or contributed to his accident and damages, if any, and descendant's negligence is comparatively greater than defendant's negligence. Therefore, plaintiff is not entitled to recover their alleged damages. Damages as in what? Money-wise to the estate? Very interesting this. So basically it's saying, and I'll read it again, that Noah Presgrove was negligent. That Noah, his negligence caused or contributed his death. The accident which caused the death. The damages to Noah. It's on the same lines to some extent as like what Sarah Long was saying in the past with Noah, his choice to drink, and if it was to end up down the highway too. But Noah's negligence is greater than the defendants. The defendants, as in Caleb and Jack specifically here with the alcohol situation. Yes, you could say Jack may have supplied alcohol to Noah and got it from a store underage, but even if Jack didn't do that, Noah probably still would have got alcohol from elsewhere at the party or may have had his own. So there is that. And, even if a defendant did supply some alcohol to Noah, was it the majority of it over the course of the days at the party, or did Noah Presgrove have his own alcohol, use other people's alcohol, use what was there, instead of always being served the alcohol, but he got it himself? He grabbed a can, he drank it himself, and so on. But depending on the cause of death, if it's simply an accident, you could say the negligence, the recklessness, the responsibility falls more on Noah than others, defendants. But if Noah's death involved other people, manslaughter, or straight up murder, well then the negligence factor evens out and probably is more towards party-goers defendants rather than Noah. So it's kind of being treated as an accident here, but yet the official autopsy report stated it's unknown, the death, whether it's an accident or something else. It's kind of an interesting situation, that, personally. I mean, are you shocked by it, how it's stating that Noah Presgrove, higher negligence there upon himself, almost, for some people could interpret it as self-inflicted. Number 3, the accident was an unavoidable accident, casualty, misfortune, which occurred without negligence or the part of defendants. Is that suggesting that Noah Presgrove died at the hands of himself, of his own recklessness, that no other defendant was present or so? I said I'm looking at this raw first-time reactions. You let me know what you think down below. And why are they calling it an accident? Could it be something else? Because I'm sure the wrongful death lawsuit worded it as accident or something else. Accident or beatdown, right? Murder or an accident. But here it's just saying accident. But does the autopsy report support that officially? Well, the original autopsy report, what we saw public, didn't. Not direct. Occurred without part of defendants, as in Jack and Caleb. What, they weren't there. Number 4, defendants owed no duty of care to Noah Presgrove. I understand that for Caleb. You know, if Caleb's not at the party, he's not at the party. If Caleb was at the party, does he have to owe Noah something? Can't all just fall on one person then? Other people about. The factor with Jack, because Jack is best friends to Noah, should there be a responsibility factor there? Maybe morally, socially speaking, just by basics, as in looking out for your friend, having their back. But if you fall asleep and then something bad happens to them, are you going to get blamed for that? Negligence? Neglecting Noah? Neglecting your friend? But you're not anticipating what's happening in the moment or what's going to happen next. If in a completely different situation, your friend was drunk, you supplied them alcohol and you were present with them. They carried on walking, they fell into a canal, drowning, struggling, needing help, and you saw it and witnessed it and you supplied the alcohol and then you walked away. Bit of negligence there, responsibility. Could have done more, should have done more, and yet you didn't. Should be responsible for that. That, whilst the person who fell into the canal, not directly planned, but kind of self-done, negligence, recklessness, drunk, scattering about, then falling in. But who supplied the alcohol in the first place? Best friend. They have a responsibility there. Some form of duty of care, if they're sober themselves, to help get the person back home where they need to be. And if that's failed, if the person at the friend's control ends up falling into water, but there is an opportunity for the friend to try and rescue the other or call into police or something, if that's not fulfilled, I think there's responsibilities there. But that's just a separate case. That's just an example I was giving, isolated. Whereas this at the party, the situation's different because it's not just Jack. There are other partygoers there. You got Caden Pressey, who's not a defendant, but still a friend to Noah Presgrove. Caden was drinking at the party, of course. Did Caden ever share a drink with Noah? Did anyone else? Non-defendants? It's worth highlighting. What else do we have? Number 4, defendants owed no duty of care to Noah, as in Jack and Caleb. 5, defendants at all times relevant exercised ordinary care to prevent injury to themselves and others, and had a right to assume Noah would obey the law. 6, descendant with full knowledge of the risk inherent in consuming excessive quantities of alcohol, including the risk of injury or death, voluntarily chose to participate and therefore descendant knowingly and voluntarily assumed the risk. As in, it's been associated that Noah Presgrove's situation, getting drunk and then from one event linking on to another, ultimately to his death, it kind of falls on Noah himself. Not directly, but if you wanted to word it alternatively in a cold way, Noah was asking for it and should have known better. That's kind of like how you could interpret it. That's not coming from my opinion, okay? I think it's a messy situation, and I'm sure people that may read this might be frustrated by it to some extent. Let's continue on. 7. Plaintiffs' claims for punitive damages are unconstitutional pursuant to the 5th Amendment to the United States. Okay. Oklahoma Constitution and should be dismissed as a matter of law. Punitive damages. Was the damages of payments up to, what was it, $60,000? Or could it have been beyond in regards to damages to Noah, possible pain inflicted at the time of his death, however that was caused by, and then damage to the victim's family psychologically? I think that's some of the extent that was mentioned in the wrongful death lawsuit. 8. Plaintiffs' alleged damages were the result of superseding and or intervening causes for which the defendants cannot be held responsible. 9. Defendants specifically and generally deny that they were negligent in any way in causing the subject accident. 10. Defendants plead these affirmative defences required by Oklahoma statutes to preserve the defences and not waive the same. If the defence does not bear out support for these defences, defendant will withdraw the defences at the appropriate time. Request for jury trial. Defendants Caleb Newton and Jack Newton demand that the above captioned case be tried before jury. Defendants in accordance with Oklahoma Rules of Civil Procedure. And then there is one more page there. Certificate of service. So with that being said, you let me know if you're shocked or surprised, and we'll just head on over to Facebook now to just look at a brief summary. Oh, whilst we're here, mentioned about the percentages as well, and I guess responsibilities, and it was kind of suggested here to do with from AI technology or so it's not truly official based on the true documents, but like a summary, some kind of framework to base it on, supposedly. I guess you take it with a grain of salt. My understanding, Oklahoma jury would need to decide if Noah assumed 50% or more the risk responsibility as a legal adult who drank alcohol, not blaming the victim. Nobody thinks it's Noah's fault. About establishing who has assumed the risk if a beating cannot be proven. It looks like there is an assumed risk we all take when doing risky things like drinking. So I see people already crying victim blaming and so on. Given a monetary award, which would be adjusted if the jury feels Jack had more than 50% responsibility to keep Noah safe. That does not hold up in court when we're talking about someone who's 19. Nobody's blaming Noah for the accident. Just saying he had at least 50% of the assumed risk that goes along with drinking. Am I understanding this correctly? Well, to be honest, with Noah Presgrove, in terms of responsibility, in terms of negligence, recklessness, leading up to the death situation, it said that it kind of overshadowed the negligence by the likes of defendants, meaning it's probably going to be over 50%, at least from how I interpreted it in general. And what's this? AI, Chat GPT, take that into consideration. Oklahoma's negligence rule uses modified comparative negligence, 51%. If a plaintiff or descendant in a wrongful death case is found to be more than 50% responsible, the estate recovers nothing. Okay. And from what I interpreted in the response by Jack Caleb and the affirmative part, it was going on about Noah having more responsibility over Caleb and Jack, meaning it wasn't 50%, it would have been over 50%, meaning the estate would recover nothing based on that at least. But I also mentioned about punitive damages, none of that present, I think. If the plaintiff is 50% or less responsible, damages are reduced proportionally. Example, jury finds Noah 30% responsible, defendant 70%. Estate recovers damages but reduced by 30%. Jury finds Noah 55% responsible, estate gets 0. Right, so if the defendants were 100% responsible, then the estate will recover all damages and there would be no reducement. Okay, now there are comments there and responses, but we don't need to go round and round in circles there. But what we do need to do is at least acknowledge Michael Facecast, because I've not done so for a bit. Let's just see Michael's point of view, because he would have done this with some of the previous ones like Val Patrol. Latest filing says, a lot. Caleb Newton and son Jack officially responded. Defense strategy, shocking. 1, they claim Noah's family has no valid case. They blame Noah himself. They argue Noah was negligent, that his own actions caused his death, and even go so far as to say negligence was greater than theirs. Well, if that's in their words, okay. I said, I'm reading these documents for the very first time raw. They call Noah's death an unavoidable accident. They say they owed Noah no duty of care, despite hosting the party where alcohol and minors mixed. But the thing is, with defendants Jack and Caleb, they weren't living at the house. They're not host. The true host of the party is Avery, birthday girl, Carter, and Logan Jernigan. Those 3 girls were living there and were host. The likes of Stevie Howard and, is it Jonah or something, Bob Wilcox and whatever you call them supposedly knowing of the party taking place, having a responsibility for that, but not as host. As for Jack Newton, I didn't think Jack was a host to the party. He was someone kind of invited down, because Jack, although boyfriend to Carter in a relationship with Jack at the time and onwards, Jack wasn't living there. Jack wasn't, I guess, setting up the party, to my knowledge, unless Jack was present there on the Friday, the beginning of it all, setting it up, playing some part of a host. But normally a host is someone that is providing a party, providing a setting, and may own or live at the place, unless my interpretation is different to other people. Unavoidable accident. Interesting outlook there. So what type of accident would that be if it's unavoidable? Noah walking along by himself, choosing to removing himself from the party, meaning there's no one else around him, and then it's all down to Noah's outcome, walking along, and then whatever happens, that's considered unavoidable. Is that so? Would it be considered unavoidable if Noah Presgrave was in the bed of a pickup truck, a vehicle? Texas boys or some people leave, they don't check the back, they don't check if Noah's in the back, they just get in, drive on north. Could that have been avoidable? You could say the people should have looked around the back of the truck to make sure the tailgate and everything is all locked up and secure, just to double check your vehicle anyway, safety reasons, and then unexpectedly come across Noah, maybe. Noah, if he was, which is unlikely, just walking down the highway, unavoidable. I mean, drivers along the way, they're not anticipating to come across Noah, so they might not be able to do much about that. Noah Presgrave himself, once he's drunk, he's drunk. Makes things hard to control oneself. Number 4, they say they owed Noah no duty of care despite hosting. 5, argue they acted carefully whilst Noah did not. A bit weird. I mean, if you're talking about the side-by-side rollover, Jack's asleep, Noah is not. Noah does the rollover, Jack is asleep. So in that particular event, Noah was more reckless than Jack. You could say Caden Pressey was not as reckless. I know he's not a defendant, but you know what I'm saying. I don't know how many people were using the golf clubs to smash objects up at the party, because from what Caden Pressey said, him and Noah were playing with them. Recklessness there, causing damage to stuff on site, but not to oneself. No harm there. But what was Jack doing, right? Who was the most reckless person at the party? I mean, Brylan Sweat slapped Noah, Shandon slapped Noah, physicality there, even if it was in good fun and joking about. Did we actually see Noah Presgrave lay hands on anyone? Well, wrestling with Mikey, but that seems to be 50-50. Mikey fish hooking Noah Presgrave, Noah biting back on the finger. So it's interesting looking at that aspect. I mean, do we actually have party footage which shows and proves Noah Presgrave being reckless in acts, in moments? All the party footage, what we're seeing, doesn't really show Noah Presgrave in a reckless way. I mean, not caring or looking after yourself, you could put the argument across, was it Carter running through that board, running into something, regardless of what the material was, bit reckless there, but maybe no harm done. You can't really associate the party footage, the public stuff, with the claims or counterpoints, because it doesn't tell a full story. And then the most important footage just isn't publicly available, which would matter more in these situations. I mean, do people think that Caleb acted more carefully? It's hard to say about Caleb if Caleb wasn't there. As for Jack, how careful was Jack at the party? I mean, you could argue and say Jack emotionally at times may have not been careful. Jack going behind Noah's back, flirting with Noah's girlfriend. Jack getting tense, supposedly, because older brother Colton was talking to Jack's girlfriend and Jack said, "Don't come back the next day." Supposedly these claims, as told by the horse's mouse. 6, they used alcohol against him. They claim Noah knowingly and voluntarily assumed the risk of death by drinking. I mean, if you're at a party and there's all alcohol about and nobody comes up to you and says, "Do you want a drink? Do you want to top up?" If Noah Presgrave was in that environment and no one gave or provided alcohol, would Noah just sit there, or would Noah take the opportunity in getting a drink? I mean, you got to compare it to all the parties in the past, like what Caden Pressey said. All the parties attended together in the past, Noah would get drunk, Noah would walk away. All those parties where Noah got drunk, was there a room for concern then? Was Noah just lucky that nothing bad happened to him back then? No accidents whatsoever? And it was all A-OK? Was there a reason to get justice back then? No, because no one died. Was there a reason to take up on social hosting vow? Absolutely. But was it done? Supposedly not. Only when it's too late, the death of someone comes in place. 7, they are punishing them would be unconstitutional. They blame other causes, claiming superseding factors were responsible, not them. They deny negligence in any way, shape or form. They demand a jury trial. What this really means, the Newtons aren't just denying involvement, they're shifting the blame squarely onto Noah. Now, in some interpretations, not everybody agrees, but Sarah Long's point of view is probably similar to Caleb and Jack's, maybe, in some ways. The victim, whilst portraying themselves as having no responsibility. For Noah's family and community, this isn't just a legal defence, it's a slap in the face. We now see their position clearly: deny, deflect and accuse Noah himself. Now, will that pattern follow with the likes of Avery, Carter, Stevie and so on as defendants? Maybe. Truth will come out and no legal strategy will erase red flags. And then those were just the things what we've already read out. As for some comments, we'll just have a quick look through them. You claim to have legal experience, but you paint this in the most dramatic way possible. They answered the legal complaint, plain and simple. It is the plaintiff's responsibility to prove what they allege. Defendants do not have to prove their innocence. If the family has the proof, more power to them. But the way you're painting this is so inflammatory that I don't think you're doing anyone any good. But if your intention is to rile up your base followers, good job. Interesting. See, at the end of the day, I guess, truly, if all defendants came out with such shocking responses and said, "No, Presgrave, you're responsible, you deserve it, case closed," as bad, as cold, as nasty as that may come across, as long as the victim's family, through the subpoena, for example, have the material and evidence to say, well, actually, you're responsible, stop deflecting, and so on. But as long as the hard evidence in the background can show the real situation when the real time comes about, that the responses and the attitudes right now, as dark as it may be, it's not the end of the world. So maybe it's that emotional connection once again, as in people thinking it is the end of the world just by these responses. But as I said earlier on, whether someone's innocent or guilty, likely they will deny stuff and protect themselves. If you're innocent, you'll prove that and you'll stand by it. If you're guilty, you probably still value freedom over other things, so you'll still try and put it across as in you're not responsible. And let's just take into consideration, if more so Jack Newton was deflecting and shifting responsibility more so on Noah Presgrave, is it a surprise just based on that theory? Because Jack Newton was the one to shift the focus on the whole Saturday night, Sunday morning past midnight argument between Noah and Jack. Jack worded it as if it was a 50-50 over girl trouble. They cried, they hugged each other and made up afterwards and it was okay. Yet Caden Pressey on the sideline said from what he witnessed and heard, it was Noah starting it off and yelling at Jack because Jack was the one to have gone behind Noah's back and flirted with Noah's girlfriend, and Noah's given him a piece of his mind towards Jack. So it seemed more one-sided, that, and yet Jack worded it as if, no, we're kind of both responsible, we both apologised. Why would Noah need to apologise when Jack's the one that started it all off? Based on Caden witnessing the situation. Based on that theory and scenario, shifting the blame, spreading the responsibility to ease oneself. External and self-manipulative minimisation could apply behavioural-wise to the response by Jack in the response in the documents. Wouldn't be a surprise. Just based on that concept, Emily, my response is, let's pray they do. 3 attorneys. Right. Caleb and Jack were not the host, were they? Noah did drink voluntary. Yeah. I agree that Caleb and Jack were not hosts that lived there. At least from what I'm aware of. Now, was it the wrongful death lawsuit, or was it more so Val Patrol's response? In one of the documents what we read, it was regarding Noah Presgrove as a minor. And people were saying, regarded as a minor when you're under the legal drinking age when it comes to the whole drinking scenario. But if it's not coming down to drinking, by default, 18 and over, you're an adult, but not old enough to be able to drink, but old enough to do other stuff. It's a bit all over the place. It's a bit messy. But by default, an adult is 18 and over. Minor is under 18. So they probably should change the wording, I would say. How did Caleb provide the house? The blame is not on one specific person, is it? It lists several in the lawsuit. Beyond the shadow of a doubt, there are many factors involved. The side-by-side rollover. How can anyone be certain Noah was not injured in some way? Well, Dr. Baden, or as Carl says, Dr. Baden, ended up suggesting that the side-by-side rollover, Noah Presgrove may have got injured internally, unknown to Noah at the time, because of alcohol, because of adrenaline kicking in, and not showing it outwards, not visible outwards or on the surface level, so partygoers thought he was all okay. But there was a slow internal bleed within, filling up with blood, and taking a toll on Noah long term. Later, when Noah walks away at 3:30, isolating himself, vulnerable, and prone to death, collapsing, and getting caught up in one event leading to another, as it's all been suggested in my previous videos. Noah was not injured in some way, and there is no proof, but risky to have minors drinking, and 4 days is just beyond reasoning. 4-day drinking, but it wasn't really 4-day long drinking, and for Noah, it would have only been 3 days because he wasn't there Friday. As for others, it might differ. But Noah coming and going, as we know, Sunday morning after breakfast, going back home to sleep, to shower, to rest, sober up to some extent maybe, kind of on and off. It's not complete drinking on and on. Denise Rogers-Arnold, isn't that exactly the way Val Patrol responded? Isn't that the responsibility of the attorneys to protect the client from the alleged accusations? I'm just saying, if my attorney said, well, just go ahead and admit to every single thing rather than you did or did not, I think I'd be firing an attorney. Yeah, because that's the thing. You've got to defend them. That's the whole point. You know, the situation is a bit messy. At the end of the day, the real evidence, the counterpoints and whatnot, is what matters. Contending with the evidence is what matters, and that should come about eventually. And as said in the defendant's response, demanding for the evidence, demanding for the proof. Well, as long as the proof is there, then it can be provided and shown to their face, and then it should be okay, right? Hearing the so-called accidents and all these deaths, not including the ones that Caleb Newton was involved in. Too many unsolved cold case deaths. We want answers. Does not surprise me at all. So disgusting. If you want to pause the video, you can do so. Oh, we got Megan. Shout out to Megan. Not seen him for a while. Justice is coming. And that appears to be it for the comments there. I think there was one by Joyce Begow, which was a similar thing, but it might have just differed slightly in comments. Let me just give my final thoughts on the matter. When it comes to the party in question, what Jack had said to Caleb, which Caleb told the father to the news groups, I think the People article previously, that other partygoers were responsible for bringing their own alcohol down. That wasn't mentioned officially in the documents today, but I don't think you'd expect to see it, but it's always worth bringing it back up as for the attitudes of these people. Whether alcohol was directly supplied to Noah or not, there's still that likely chance that as long as there is loose alcohol about and Noah Presgrave is into drinking, Noah would probably grab some alcohol himself. And with what Caden had said, many times in the past when attending parties, Noah would get drunk. So it's not the first time Noah getting drunk. It's not the first time Noah being supplied with alcohol. Noah is somewhat experienced with alcohol, meaning he might be able to handle it to some extent. But I think the concept, the decision-making of Noah Presgrave, as in removing himself from the party house, whilst it's been done many times in the past and it's been okay, this one time went wrong some way or another. But if it was a murder, Noah Presgrave may have not been anticipating it. He couldn't have asked for it. I get that. In terms of an accident going wrong, unexpected, Noah Presgrave wouldn't have been anticipating it either. Very, very high chances, of course, 100%, or that's maybe a bit too strong, 99.9%, let's put it that way. But Noah Presgrave, when at the party, wasn't intending on dying when there or getting hurt. But Noah simply wanted to have a good time. Of course, at times, having a good time and getting a bit in the moment with other people and there's alcohol, one thing can lead to another and it can become a bit uncontrollable. But I just think the turning point to Noah's death, at least in general, was walking away from the party. If Noah Presgrave hadn't walked away from the party house, he'd probably still be alive. The reason why I say that is because if it would have been a murder situation, as long as Noah Presgrave spent present around innocent people as witnesses as well, then the actual murderers or murderer wouldn't be able to get their hands on the descendant, wouldn't be able to get their hands on Noah Presgrave because there's eyes on them. That for Noah to walk away and isolate himself, based on how the story has gone, of course, then it gives anyone an open opportunity to take it out on Noah, to ambush him, because it's outside, it's away from everyone. No prying eyes, no real witnesses about. Do you get me? But it's worth just pointing it out. Did Caden Pressey witness Noah walk away? No. Caden may have been told from other partygoers the situation with Noah walking away and the time. But which and how many partygoers truly witnessed and saw the time associated with when Noah Presgrave walked away? For Caden and Jasmine to say it's a normal thing to happen, yeah, it's quite possible. But all I'm pointing across is, let's just say there was no hard evidence whatsoever. You could put the counter argument across and say, well, a band of conscious party goers may have created the whole story up about Noah walking away. That maybe Noah Presgrave never actually walked away by himself. Maybe he was escorted in some way, or popped his head out but then taken away, moved on, and then something happened. It's worth suggesting. And the only reason why I mention that is because still to this day, I am yet to see any hard evidence that Noah walked away at 3:30. But equally, we're yet to see hard evidence of Caden Pressey, waking up at 5:15 and Jack announcing the news of Noah's death. The only side counter piece of evidence which can be used to contest it is the 5:27 snap of Mikey, Logan and Jasmine in bed, laughing, smiling and awake, unaware of the news of Noah, because likely it hasn't happened at that point. It would be onwards, which would be closer to 6 in the morning, which goes against Caden Pressey's timeline. So indirect counter evidence can work to some extent, but I've not seen any direct or indirect evidence to support or go against the whole 3:30 and Noah walking away. I mean, yes, you could say Jasmine Millan's snap at 3:41 saying, well, Noah is missing. It would imply any time before 3:41 is when Noah Presgrave had walked away, and he must have walked away in order to be deemed as missing and can't be found. Right, okay, and I'm working this out on the spot, so that's why you're getting the raw reaction. So the indirect supportive evidence would be Jasmine Millan's snap at 3:41 to say before that time is when Noah had walked away. Then I guess we don't have it publicly, but the shower footage, if there's teabagging footage, you look at the time of that and then say, well, in between that time And just before 3:41, somewhere in between that time frame, is when Noah walked away. Okay, fair enough. But what about the whole situation with Caden's police interview where Caden said, well, Jasmine told me between 2 to 3 in the morning, Noah walked away. What? And then returned back? And then 30 minutes later, walked away again? I think it's the same thing, but just rough estimate times given back then. Rough. But it doesn't explain the whole situation by Sarah Long that was speaking on behalf of Jasmine by saying, yeah, and Noah walked away the night before, didn't he? And you lot went out searching for him and found him and brought him back to the house. What's that all about? How many times did Noah walk away from the party? If he had walked away the night before, he was okay then. So what changed the next day in the morning, early morning? What changed ultimately? All I would say is, if there's no direct murder and it's not directly planned, but it could be out of your control or in the presence of strangers about coming and going, similar to if you're out and about and you're walking through a park, you go through the park once, what are the chances something bad's going to happen? It's kind of unknown, it might be quite low. If the park is notorious for bad things to happen and dodgy people lurking about, from flashers to inappropriate physical behaviour and all that, and depending on the gender that you are, the chances can increase drastically. If you're going through it once, the chances are going to be somewhat high. If you go through the park on a daily basis and it's notorious for bad activity, the chances that something bad is going to happen to you is almost guaranteed for as long as you keep on passing through that area. It sounds messed up. It's the case. With Noah Presgrove, how many times did Noah walk away from that party house? Once, twice? The more times Noah walks away, the higher the chances of probably tripping over, hurting oneself, tripping somehow, falling on a barbed wire fence. Not that did happen, but it's more likely to happen the more times you go out tempting fate, but you're not directly doing it that way. Does that make sense? But you're in the dark and you're crossing a road and you can't see. The more times you do it, eventually something might go wrong. You're hopping from building to building, doing parkour free running. You do it once, it works. You do it again, it works. You keep doing it, maybe at some point you might make one little mistake and that one little mistake or slip up can cost you your life. If the variables and the factors change in between whilst you're actively doing it, it suddenly gets wet, the surface becomes wet, you might slip, there's a slip risk, the chances of survival may drop, the chances of error increase. These little factors you've got to take in mind. So what were the chances of danger with Noah Presgrove? Even if it's claimed to be his fault, claimed to be his choice when walking away, his choice to be drinking. Was it Noah's wish to die though? No. It really comes down to trying to figure out how far Noah went down the dirt road and did he stop? And did anyone else follow shortly afterwards? Because it's unknown and because the cause of death in the autopsy says it's unknown, kind of a mystery, the whole blame game is kind of hard to do at this moment in time. Those that are defending themselves may point the blame elsewhere to protect themselves as like what most people would normally do, unless there's an exception of where someone is truly innocent and feels truly guilty and they can't take it or hold it anymore, so they do break down to some extent. It's a very messy time, but these responses and attitudes, are you surprised by whether they're guilty or innocent? Are you surprised by their responses? Likely people will protect themselves and protect one another. But the whole situation with Caleb being a part of it all is just, I don't know, just seems a bit odd because the whole, owning of the vehicle when one doesn't supposedly and giving no permission why would Caleb need to do that when Jack's literally on site present, best friend who could give the thumbs up or not? Why go out of your way to contact Caleb and say, hey, can I use your ride or can I use your son's ride? Honestly, Noah Presgrove likely wouldn't be contacting Caleb in that sense. And from what Caden Pressey has said, with the exception of Friday, how you interpret that, from Saturday, Sunday, Monday onwards, Caden had said never saw Caleb Newton, Jack's father, present at the party house, never there 100%. That's got to mean something, right? So if you trust Caden, then you'd be led to believe that Caleb Newton was never at the party present, especially at the time of Noah's death. And if Caleb wasn't there, Caleb isn't a witness. Caleb isn't a person of interest in that regard. The only thing that I would say where there could be some involvement indirectly, Sunday morning after breakfast, going back to the party house, dropping Caden off, dropping the girls off, and then it was said, I can't remember who by, was it Caden Pressey himself in one of the interviews? I think it probably would have been Caden Pressey, that the guys went back out, Caden left behind, guess because he wanted to. Knee surgery, recovery from the meniscus ACL, makes total sense, resting. Noah, Brylan, Isaac, anyone else, Jack, any other male names I've left out there, went back out to town to do what? Who knows? And met up with Caleb Newton. And do you remember it worded that way in one of the interviews? I said the guys, including Noah, went back out to town to meet up with Caleb Newton. Responsibilities there. Well, it's mainly adults all out together or close to being adults. I know Brylan Sweat may have been 17 or so at the time, but most 18 or 19 onwards for most part of it. Duty of care in that regard. Caleb, older figure, parent as well to Jack, bit more of a responsibility, but still adults having their own individual responsibilities. It might be more of a moral responsibility, a social responsibility to some extent. And people will probably say, well, because of Caleb in the past with the deaths, wrong place, wrong time, whatever you want to call it, boating accident, Warwicker, 2020, Caleb operating the boat, alcohol breath, whether truly drunk or not, I can't remember, 7-year-old accidentally or mysteriously falls in, as it was worded, never really solved, and hit the propeller. And then, was it Rosa Newton's brother or brother-in-law, crash, and Caleb's nearby or so. Wherever Caleb is, death follows, I think what people are putting across. If Caleb's present and there's a death that follows, there's that instant association or assumption that, well, Caleb should have done better or should have been held responsible for not looking out for whoever present. Depends how you look at it, right? So they could apply that to the Warwick or onwards, whether it's Warwick or a different town, when the partygoers went back out and Noah was tagging along with Jack and Jack's father Caleb, whatever they got up to, drinking or anything like that. But then again, nothing went wrong on that day. Nothing went wrong at that point. Noah was able to make it back home safe. And then later in the afternoon or evening, when Jack wanted Noah to come back to the party, and by that point Caleb would have been away doing his own thing. So I think more focus on Jack, which you'd expect, because being at the party and a best friend to Noah. Jack, adult age, Noah, adult age, at a party, underage though for drinking, but do they know the risk of what it's like to drink and the outcomes? You'd think not just Noah, but most of the partygoers would understand to some extent the dangers or the side effects of drinking, especially if they've attended parties many times in the past. There might build up a bit of a resilience to alcohol, but more so an understanding on the effect it can have. But even if you've had a drink and you drunk too much and then you throw up afterwards and issues there, and you think, oh, never again, I never want to drink again until the next week, until the week after. Socially, drinking can be a magnetizing, attractive activity in which even when you might not quite feel up to it, the fact that you're around supportive people or encouraging people that may want you to drink or encourage you to drink, or they drink themselves and you feel naturally obliged to do so yourself, whilst hanging out with familiar faces and having a fun, good time, but you might be encouraged to drink. Natural forces, presence and atmosphere may lift the mood and get you out, and then you drink. Some could consider it addicting, others could consider it unhealthy, but it's that concept of, even when people know and outline the risk, sort of reward ratio, the dangers behind it, the side effects, people may still be willing to go for it all over again because of a greater factor, because of a greater pull, as in having fun with people, at the cost of your health to some extent. You're not thinking about it in the moment. Things just get thrown out the window. And like if you're at a party or possibly at a rave, let your hair down, maybe you got hair or not, and you just caught up in the moment. As for Noah Presgrave, was Noah caught up in the moment? Was it a moment or was it multiple? I mean, the psychological effects, as in drunk, tension, bedroom debacle, saying something maybe Noah wasn't supposed to say, Avery got triggered by it, walking away, wrongful death lawsuit suggests, with no given time, as in a verbal fight between Avery, Jack versus Noah Presgrave. Did a verbal fight escalate and go further past that point? Ultimately, it would be good to know if that verbal fight took place before Noah walked away, or during Noah walked away, or after, and people followed up on him, distanced themselves from the party, 2-3 people by themselves in the dark. Only they would know. And Noah would know, but taking that secret or that understanding to the grave. Kind of like the how it was worded in the Dylan Rounds case with the murderer Brenner, Dylan, and best friend to murderer Don Hatley. 3 of the people will know the truth, one of which has taken it to the grave, which was Dylan. Couldn't do anything about that. The other 2 are unlikely willing to talk or open up, which for some time was the case. That possibly translate over to the Noah Presgrave case too. But it seems like, based on previous patterns and behaviour, just the concept of walking away from the party house, that's ultimately the turning point leading up to Noah's death. Noah didn't ask for it. Noah wasn't deserving of it. But if Noah had known what was to come next, and for Noah to remove himself from the party, you could say it's, what do you expect? But because Noah wasn't anticipating what was to happen next, for Noah to walk away, it's like any other time from any other party. But from our point of view, because it's easier, because we can look back at it now when it's like too late, if Noah just had stayed at the party, he would have been okay, or at least up to a certain point. No guarantee that the next party that Noah would attend, if he stayed with the same people, that he would be alive. It could end up death, but at a later point. If the chances of there's any grudges or hatred towards Noah. But as I said, for the party, for most part of it, the recorded footage showed Noah on the receiving end of slaps and the receiving end of being written on and all of that. And maybe Noah was up for it and okay with it and happy. What did Noah do at the party to deserve death? Is there any proof or evidence, any hard evidence which shows Noah doing something, pissing somebody off? Like if something bad happens to you, did you bring it upon yourself? Did you annoy someone? Did you trigger a person? Did you threaten them? Did you insult them and it went too far, went wrong? Still don't deserve death, but a retaliation, a reaction from someone. Did you cause a reaction? Did you cause some trouble? Don't know with Noah Presgrave, because side-by-side rollover, whilst Noah putting other people's safety at risk because of reckless drunk driving, it was said that the other passengers, possibly Texas boys, were all laughing, joking it off. No hard feelings. Okay, then maybe it's not that big of a deal. Any other events after that though? Noah, bedroom debacle, making Avery jealous, making Avery feel humiliated, calling her out, could have sparked something. But why would Jack need to step in to defend Avery? Because what Jack feels obliged to, because on behalf of the girlfriend Carter, and Carter's sister to Avery, so you're merging in with the family, you've got to set a good example and defend your people now on. Who knows? As said, in terms of all the different theories, the outcomes, the concepts of multiple events leading to Noah's death, causing all the injuries, to total it all, to try and apply that all into this one video and the defendant's response probably isn't possible. But do I think ultimately that all the blame falls on Noah? No. Do I feel that other people are responsible in some way? You could put the argument across and say, based on the wrongful death lawsuit, you could say to some extent, yes, if it is true that Jack did purchase alcohol from Valpatrol, the store, limited liabilities, and bring it down to the party to specifically supply it to Noah. But where's the evidence and proof to say that that specific bottle or can was supplied directly to Noah and that Noah consumed the full percentage of it? Is there any proof of that? That's what makes it a bit tricky. It could be interpreted, or it could have been the original situation that Jack had specifically intended on buying alcohol for his best friend, but when arriving at the party, Noah didn't drink it or didn't touch it. Someone else did. Someone else stole it. The intent to supply the descendant with the alcohol, but it didn't ultimately lead to that execution aspect. But maybe the attitude and the mentality behind it, mentally, a form of responsibility to a small extent. But trying to prove it all with the evidence or the lack of it, it could be a bit difficult now unless you was to get a hold of that one bottle purchased by Jack from that store and it has touch-based DNA, lip, saliva upon the lip, the bottle, the hands applied to it, and it shows that, yeah, Noah had drunk from it, but would it show how much Noah had drunk from that specific bottle? Can you look at the alcohol levels? Can you look at the specific alcohol within the body and say, well, actually, this is a certain type of alcohol and a certain type of brand? I don't think you can possibly do that, in my opinion. So it kind of makes it harder to pin the blame or the responsibilities on people. But could you say, well, Jack Newton should have known better not to give alcohol to Noah because of the age he was? But then again, if there's been parties in the past, who bought the alcohol then? Was there ever a time in the past where another partygoer gave Noah alcohol? Was there ever a time Noah Presgrave supplied someone else alcohol who was underage? Not pinning the blame on Noah, but dispersing it, as in, at different parties, there are different people that bring or buy alcohol and supply to certain said individuals. And all those times when it hadn't gone wrong, there was no reason to blame or pin responsibility on anyone. But it's one time when it has gone wrong and it's backfired, now is the time to blame and see who's responsible. If it was an accident and it was uncontrollable and there was no true murder, then you can argue and say really no one intended on wanting anyone dead at the party. So the responsibilities factor may lower itself, but if there was ever a time of room for concern with Noah, his safety, any danger threat levels, if partygoers ever knew about that and they're the same said defendants, then maybe a duty of care to possibly look out for Noah, look out for a friend. But then does that link to the legal situation or more of a moral situation? You let me know what you think down below in the comment section. The responses by Caleb and more so Jack don't surprise me. You might see that pattern follow with the other party goers and parents like Stevie. Ultimately, even if the responses aren't what you wanted or hoped for, would you expect them to own up if they were responsible and then end the case like that? I think most part of it, in most cases, people wouldn't. People would try to defend themselves, even if they were guilty, try to drag it out regardless. It all comes down to the evidence and that subpoena. I don't know if the family will ever speak out about it or give a heads up. Probably not. Are the family going to react or be surprised by the response by Jack and Caleb? Who knows? But there might be more of an emotional response in general by people with this particular response in the documents because it's Jack, of all people, the best friend to Noah. As for the others, they're just friends to Noah, but the best friend saying this or that. And people interpret it as, well, pinning responsibility, pinning the blame and shifting the focus on Noah. It's him. It's somewhat self-caused, or at least the events following up to it. It might feel cold. It might feel like there's no emotion, at least on paper through text. And then you compare it to Caden Pressey. Caden is just a friend to Noah, but a best friend to Jack. And Jack is a best friend to Noah, and I think just a friend to Caden. That Caden has shown, it might not be a fair comparison, but just from what I know of, Caden Pressey has shown more emotion towards a friend as Noah Presgrave than Jack Newton has, based on what I've seen. It might differ from other evidence and all that, but from what I've seen, that's just how it is. And Caden isn't even a defendant, and yet Caden feels more responsible, just in terms of the whole giving Noah a ride home and not being able to, it eating him up, as Caden had already acknowledged. Everybody may react different. Some people may be hardened. Some people's defense mechanism may be kicking in when sad, upset, or dealing with things. But let's not go any further because you can only explain so much. If you found the video somewhat interesting, hit the thumbs up, share the video. We'll see what happens next and other stuff to catch up on. This was breaking news, so it kind of overlapped with other things that I was going to do. So I just thought I'd get this done now, as soon as possible, to spread that awareness. My name's Warlight Raff. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Good night for now.